On a quiet country porch, 12-year-old Olivia Taylor witnessed something few would ever believe. A Bigfoot family appeared from the mist, not with rage, but with sorrow. What unfolded between a grieving mother, her child, and a young girl will stay with you forever, and it will break your heart. Olivia Taylor was 12 years old when she first began noticing unusual things around her home. She lived in a small wooden house with her father, a man who had worked hard all his life and now carried the quiet weight of being a widower. The house stood on the edge of a thick forest, where the trees grew tall and close, creating a dark wall at the back of the property. Most evenings, Olivia would sit on the porch after supper. It was her favorite place in the world. The boards were old but sturdy, and from there she could see the wide stretch of meadow that faded into the woods. She often sat with her knees pulled up, her chin resting on her arms, and simply watched. Her father was a practical man who kept to his chores and didn't waste words. He cared for Olivia deeply, but he was not one to speak much of feelings. Olivia understood, and she didn't mind. She had her own way of passing time. She listened to the wind moving through the grass. She studied the deer that came out at dusk. She noticed the way the light changed as the sun went down behind the ridge. It was a quiet life, simple but steady. And yet, for all the peace that seemed to hang over their home, Olivia often felt a sense of waiting, as if something beyond the trees was watching her too, hidden just out of sight. It was late one evening when Olivia first heard the footsteps. She had been sitting on the porch as usual, listening to the crickets and watching the last of the light fade behind the trees. At first, the sound was faint, almost like the steady thump of someone walking slowly in the grass. It was heavier than a deer and steadier than the shuffle of a raccoon. Olivia sat very still, her heart thudding as she listened. The sound stopped just at the edge of the forest, as though whoever or whatever it was did not wish to step out into the open. The next morning, Olivia noticed something on the porch that made her pause. Near the railing, pressed faintly into the wood, were what looked like handprints. They were larger than any human hand she had ever seen. The fingers were long and wide, the span too great for her father or anyone she knew. She touched the prints with her own small hand, comparing the size. It made her shiver. That night, the footsteps came again. Slow, measured, and heavy, circling the house. Olivia wanted to wake her father, but she stayed quiet, listening. She was frightened, but not in the way she expected. There was no sense of anger or harm in the sound. It felt more like curiosity, as if someone was only watching. The following day, she told her father what she had seen and heard. He frowned, shook his head, and told her it was most likely a bear, or maybe raccoons scratching about. He said the woods were full of animals, and she should not let her imagination run away. Olivia nodded, though she knew deep down these signs were different. The nights that followed brought more of the same. Footsteps around the porch, shadows moving near the trees, handprints that seemed to appear in new places, always large, always strange. Olivia began to feel certain she was not imagining any of it. She should have been terrified, but she wasn't. Instead, she felt watched in a way that was calm, almost careful. Whoever lingered near her home seemed to want no harm. It was as though they were waiting for her to notice, waiting for her to understand. It was just after dusk when Olivia first saw the eyes. From her porch, she noticed two steady, glowing shapes at the edge of the tree line. They did not flicker like animal eyes caught in light. They held still, focused directly on her, unblinking, almost thoughtful. The shape behind the eyes slowly stepped into view. It was a towering figure, broad-shouldered and covered in thick, dark fur. The outline was massive, taller than any person she had ever seen. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. She knew at once this was not a bear, nor any animal she had been warned about. Then she saw something else. Clinging tightly to the fur of the creature's side was a smaller figure, a baby. Its arms wrapped firmly around the larger one, its face turned toward Olivia with wide, curious eyes. The sight stunned her. The larger figure, clearly a female, moved forward slowly, each step deliberate, as though she wished to be seen but not feared. Olivia sat frozen. Every instinct told her to run inside, yet she could not move. She did not feel threatened. The air was heavy, but it carried no sense of danger. The baby Bigfoot shifted slightly, peeking over its mother's fur, staring at Olivia with an innocence that made her heart pound. For a brief moment, the two young ones, human and creature, held each other's gaze. Olivia's fear gave way to something she could not name. It felt like recognition. The female stood there only a moment longer, then turned with quiet grace. She stepped back toward the shadows of the trees. The baby looked once more at Olivia before pressing its face into its mother's fur. Without a sound, they vanished into the woods, leaving Olivia trembling on the porch, her world forever changed. Several nights passed before Olivia saw them again. She had almost convinced herself the first encounter had been a dream, something her mind created from shadows and fear. But one cool evening, as she sat quietly on the porch, the shapes appeared once more. This time, there were three. The mother she had already seen, the baby clinging close, and now another figure, larger, broader, with a heavy presence that filled the edge of the yard. The father. His size was beyond anything Olivia could measure. He stood silently, watching her with dark, steady eyes, as though weighing her place in this strange meeting. The mother stepped closer to the porch. Olivia noticed the baby shift against her side. It was not clinging as tightly as before. Its small leg hung at an odd angle, and when it tried to place weight on it, Olivia could see the limp. The sight struck her heart in an instant. Fear slipped away, replaced by a strong wave of compassion. She leaned forward without thinking, her hands gripping the edge of the porch railing. She wanted to help, though she knew she could not. The baby's soft, pained eyes locked with hers again, and for a moment she felt the sadness as if it were her own. Inside the house, Olivia's father had risen from his chair. Drawn by the silence, he came to the window and saw them standing there. His eyes widened. For years, he had dismissed Olivia's words, brushing them aside as imagination. Now, faced with the sight of the towering figures so close to his home, he stood frozen in disbelief. Olivia felt his presence behind her, but she did not turn. Her eyes stayed fixed on the baby, her heart aching with a helpless need to comfort. The family remained only for a short time, silent and still, before turning back to the trees. Her father finally found his voice. "Good Lord," he whispered. He believed now. After that night, the visits became more frequent. The family of three would appear at the edge of the yard, sometimes standing in the shadows, other times stepping quietly onto the porch. They never came with noise or threat. Their presence was heavy but calm, as if they meant no harm. Olivia began leaving scraps of food near the steps. Bits of bread, fruit, and leftovers from supper. At first, the food sat untouched for hours. Then, when she looked again, it would be gone. She never saw them take it, but the empty plates told her enough. In time, the Bigfoot parents began accepting her offerings more openly, reaching for what she left without hesitation. Her father watched from a distance, never interfering. He did not fully understand it, but he could see there was no danger. He allowed Olivia to continue, though his eyes always carried worry. The bond between Olivia and the baby grew stronger with every visit. Though they never touched, their eyes met often. The baby would peek out from behind its mother, tilting its head with a curiosity. Olivia mirrored. Both were young. Both carried innocence. Neither needed words to understand the other. The parents seemed to notice as well. They allowed the baby to linger near Olivia, closer than before, almost as if they trusted her. A quiet understanding grew between them. A fragile bridge built on patience, respect, and simple kindness. The storm rolled in heavy and dark, rain slashing against the windows, and wind rattling the boards of the old house. Olivia sat awake on the porch despite the weather, uneasy, waiting, knowing in her heart they would come. Through the curtain of rain, the figures appeared. First, the tall, broad father, then the mother close behind, and finally the small one between them. Their steps were slow, their shapes blurred by the storm, but Olivia knew at once who they were. Her breath caught when she saw the baby stumble. The child tried to climb the porch steps, but its legs gave way. With a weak cry, the small creature collapsed onto the boards, soaked and shivering. Olivia's fear vanished. She dropped to her knees beside it, tears streaming down her face. She whispered softly, words of comfort, though she knew the baby could not understand her language. Her hands hovered close, aching to help, yet she dared not touch. The mother leaned forward, her massive form shaking with a sound that pierced the night. It was low, deep, and sorrowful, a cry that spoke of pain older than words. Olivia had never heard anything so heartbreaking. The sound made her own tears fall harder. The father stood behind them, silent in the storm. Slowly, he bowed his great head toward Olivia. It was not a gesture of threat, but of acknowledgement, as if he recognized her compassion and accepted it. Inside the doorway, Olivia's father stood frozen. He had no words, no action to take. All he could do was watch his daughter kneeling in the rain, her tears mingling with the storm, comforting a creature not meant for this world yet tied to hers. The storm passed slowly, leaving the world heavy with mist and silence. The first light of dawn pushed weakly through the clouds, casting a pale glow across the yard. Olivia was still on the porch, her dress soaked through, her hands trembling from the long night. The Bigfoot family remained close. The father stood tall but weary, his eyes fixed on the forest, as though already preparing to leave. The mother crouched beside her child, brushing a massive hand across its fur with tender care. The baby stirred weakly, breathing shallow, its strength almost gone. Then, with great care, the mother lifted the child into her arms. She held it close against her chest, rocking slightly as if to shield it from the pain. The sight gripped Olivia's heart so tightly she could hardly breathe. She knew what it meant. This was not a visit. This was a farewell. The mother turned her gaze toward Olivia. For a long, still moment, their eyes met. The weight in that look was almost too much to bear. It carried sorrow, gratitude, and a silent understanding. No words were spoken, yet Olivia knew the meaning. The bond they had shared, fragile and brief, was ending here. Olivia's tears returned, but she did not reach forward. She simply nodded, her small gesture saying what words could not. She understood. The mother shifted the child higher into her arms and turned toward the trees. The father stepped behind her, and together they walked into the thick morning mist. Their shapes grew faint, their footsteps fading, until they were gone. Olivia stayed on the porch, staring into the empty woods, her heart heavy with the knowledge she would never see them again. Years passed, and Olivia grew into adulthood, but the memory of that night never left her. The vision of the mother holding her child, the father bowing his head, and the sorrowful cry in the storm stayed fixed in her mind as clearly as the day it happened. She often thought about why they came to her porch. She was only a child, yet they had chosen to reveal themselves, to share their burden in that quiet, wordless way. Olivia came to believe it was trust. The family, in their grief, had allowed her to see them at their most vulnerable. That was a gift few would ever know. Her father never spoke much about it, but he never doubted her again. When Olivia looked back, she remembered the silent man standing in the doorway, watching with tears in his own eyes, knowing his daughter had been part of something extraordinary. The house eventually changed hands, but in Olivia's memory, the porch remained. Empty now, yet full of meaning. It was there that two worlds once touched for a brief moment, not with fear or anger, but with sorrow and tears that bound them together forever.